And welcome back to Essential Conversations. I'm Suzanne Sherkin, and I'm so glad that you have stopped by to join us for another discussion on workplace management, how you deal with conflicts, how you deal with communication, how we talk to each other. That we talk about all this on Essential Conversations. This week I was thinking about how we manage to get ourselves back on track when we have fallen, when we have come to an obstacle in the road, when we've come up to a challenge. And I know that if you're listening, you will have experienced that at one point or another. It's part of the human condition. We rise, we fall, we rise again. It's the rising again, though, that is really the key, because not all of us are that good at it. It seems so easy to kind of get down on things, but getting ourselves back up isn't always so easy. So think about the last time you were faced with some kind of challenge, some kind of obstacle that made you feel that you just couldn't get it together. I mean, what was that? Whether it was related to your health, whether that was related to some kind of career change or a mood or some conversation that really just sideswiped you. And I know, because I have, like you, I've had my share of difficulties. The trick is getting yourself back into a frame of mind where you can just come back up, where you can get back up in your career position, you get back up in the best of your mood, of your approach, and be great, be who you really want to be. How do you do that? How do you just snap your finger and say, okay, I'm not going to be down anymore. I'm not going to be sideswiped. I'm not going to feel like I have been reduced. Well, we have today a guest, an expert in resiliency. What a great word, resiliency. What is that? Resiliency is the art of dealing with challenges, the art of dealing with obstacles and stress and anything that will get you down. I have an expert in resiliency, Michael Ballard, who will be here with us in a minute to talk about how you do that, how you get yourself back on track and get back to your fighting stance, because that is where you shine and that's where you're going to be your best. So if you want to know how to be your best and get back up there, you will want to stick around. We will be right back with Michael Ballard, the expert in resiliency. See you in a minute. Welcome back. I'm Suzanne Sherkin, and you have tuned in again to Essential Conversations, and today we're talking about resiliency and how that ability will help you in your life, how it will help you deal with stress, deal with difficulties, and just get back on track. Resiliency is a great skill, and we are with Michael Ballard today, the expert in resiliency. I'm very excited to have you here, Michael,
Thank you.
Because you have some great strategies. Before I tell you about Michael, I found this quote actually on Michael's website, and it's a quote from Harvard Business Review, talking about resiliency. More than education, more than experience, more than training, a person's level of resilience will determine who succeeds and who fails. Resiliency, how to get back in your fighting way. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you.
So you have a pretty interesting history, Michael.
I do. I got interested in resiliency at a very early age.
Yeah, tell us about that.
Well, my daughters would tease that I'm older than dinosaurs and younger than dirt, but that's what daughters are supposed to do with dads.
Older than dinosaurs.
Younger than dirt.
Younger than dirt.
Yes.
Well.
But back in
That's from a little child's perspective.
Well, that's from a teenage perspective, back when they were 10 years younger, but we love to tease about age in our family because you either get used to it and accept it or you don't, which is part of being resilient.
All right.
Anyways, at 6 I had a concussion, bicycle accident. No helmets were invented back then that at least the general public had access to, so I spent time at sick kids. And it was an interesting experience, and my roommate had the same problem. I chose to be very quiet because I had a headache that felt like it was 8 miles wide and 3 miles deep. He chose to scream for the whole time, and I was astounded that, let's see, I have a headache, he has a headache. I want the pain to go away, I choose to be quiet. Yeah. He chooses to scream, make it go away. Nobody was right or wrong. Right. I just was like, wow, same issue, two really different responses. So that was my beginning. I didn't know it was resiliency. I didn't know what it was. I just knew that suddenly I had been really introduced to same issue, big response chain differences.
Right.
And then fast forward, had some other health issues, and then I was in sales after graduating from marketing, and I was always in the top third of the sales force. I never really wanted to be number one. I'm not that competitive, but I'm competitive enough that it's nice to be in the top third, and I saw the long-term career success for those that were in the top third was pretty darn good.
Yeah, and you have had some great career successes. I mean, I see that, you have worked in some, let's see, you've been with Hallmark, and you've done some really astounding work with Hallmark, developing some great programs that are still operational today.
We had hard work, but a lot of fun. Right. So, we had a people programs and products, and that was to get in touch with our clients and make sure that what we talked about was relevant to our clients' needs to make sure we maximize profitability and also make us easier as a big corporation to deal with.
But so let's talk about resiliency, and so there's a place where that intersects with your health, with your mental attitude, with your ability to work
everything
effectively.
So at one point I got bad news that I had a health issue. It's cancer, stage 3, scary stuff. Okay, not fun. Oh, what do? Well, part of being resilient, you have to ask yourself, when you have something big come along, is this it? And no, it's a piece of your life. It's not all of your life. So some people would call that disidentification. Taking what's that?
Disidentification?
Yes, taking that piece that you've suddenly been told is big in your life, and it is, and saying, but it's not all of my life. I still have a great job. I still have a great company. I still have a great spouse, great kids, great family. And so it's a piece of my life. It's not all of my life. Easy to say, not always easy to do. But for at least 1 year in my life, I pulled it off because despite 4 months of medical treatments and home resting, I came in 7th out of 78 sales professionals.
Amazing.
Not because I was smarter, just because I'm very, very resilient.
And so what does that mean?
Well, resiliency is how you deal with adversity and you choose to bounce back. It's not a cure for anything, but it helps you make the best of any situation you're going through. So resiliency in part starts with how you choose to define yourself. So I define myself as the bounce back guy, the resilient guy, the
resiliency, the bounce back guy. That's good.
So you can choose to be a victim or a victor. And somebody said, well, yeah, but cancer, what's that got to do with? I said, well, I didn't say it was going to cure anything. But when you have an issue, you can choose to say, okay, what can I control? How can I control it? Where, when, why? Let's work on what I can control. Acknowledge the rest. Go outside for help. Because resiliency, in part for your listeners, is an inside and an outside job. So inside, how do you choose to define yourself? Another way to say it is, do you have the issue or does the issue own you? Back to that disidentification. Separate the two. You have the issue, but it shouldn't ever own you.
And that's a really key place to start, Michael, because we talk a lot on Essential Conversations, and I think everyone listening will talk about it in their lives, that it has to start from inside.
It's an inside-out project.
Whatever you do, wherever you land, you have to change your insides. And so being able to disassociate yourself from the issue that's getting you down, it takes a lot of skill, I believe.
It takes focus and concentration. I mean, I've heard it called, just gone blank, not a good thing. But anyways, I've heard it talked about your descriptive styles, how you choose to describe things, victim, victor. So when I got cancer, I went, I don't know if I'm going to live any longer, but if I'm going to go out, I'm going to go out with a bang, I'm going to go out with flair, I'm going to fight back in every way I can. So resiliency is respectfully fighting back against whatever it is, whether you're in the workplace as the shipping clerk, the president, the sales manager, whether you're an activist. I've got to meet some Toronto activists that work for the good of the people, and same set of skills to be resilient there as it is in the workplace.
So the fighting back concept is not allowing yourself to be victim. It's standing up for what you believe in. And the fighting back, really, so it takes an attitude to say, I'm going to fight back and not be victim. And then it takes the skill of knowing how to fight back. The skills
and the factors. So to go through some issues, for example, one of the things I did that made people wonder why is I got theme music.
Theme music.
I am big on theme music. When you've got an overwhelming issue that feels like a tsunami has knocked you over and twirled you around and then taken you out like a riptide, I reach for the CD player or the iPod or the iTouch, whatever you play your tunes on. And I have theme music. Some of it, I'm almost embarrassed to admit, is essentially very corny.
Okay, tell us what some of your theme music is. Because we all
it's true confessions
theme
time.
Music.
Okay. I am a big fan of the first Rocky movie for the music. Dun, da, da, dun, da, da, dun, da, da, dun.
Perfect. When we all can relate to that.
It's the comeback song for me, and if there ever was a comeback song, that's the song. Now, I've never met the man, I've never met the writer, but I figure I owe him a lot because I use what some would say is a self-hypnosis technique. And I play that in a closed-loop tape. If getting out of bed's hard that day, if making that next phone call's hard, plug and play. You can do this. You have the skill. You have the smarts. You have the ability. Do it. Oh, but, says the little voice on occasion. No, enough. Do it now.
You know what, Michael, that theme music is great. And just, I mean, that's really interesting because when this program gets going every week, we play the same music, and the theme is On a Clear Day. And it was something that I settled on after hearing a number of pieces, and every time I hear that, I know that it's going to be a great show.
Absolutely.
And I sit up straighter, and because it speaks to exactly how I want to be thinking and how I want to conduct myself. And it's funny you should say that because it wasn't sort of a conscious search, but I know that whenever I hear that, it creates a response. And you're saying exactly the same thing as a conscious strategy.
It's a conscious strategy, and because music, if it is meaningful to us, even if it's cheesy, but it's not to me, that it affects us intellectually, emotionally, and physically, because we all have rational, emotional, and physical memories, and mind-body memories are powerful, powerful tools to propel us forward or slow us down or keep us stuck. And so I consciously chose theme music that helps propel me forward. The running up the steps, you have to understand for your viewers or listeners that at one point I had a lot of abdominal surgery, so the fact of doing a sit-up at one point seemed to be rather impossible. So to see somebody do hyper-extended crunches, it was like, oh, maybe one day I'll be able to do 10 sit-ups.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe one day I'll be like him and I can do 100 sit-ups. Maybe one day I could even do one hyper-extended sit-up.
And looking at you now, you're the picture of health, and so clearly you've had
It's been 25 great years, but for 7 years it was off and on. Thought I was going to be here, wasn't sure I was going to be here. But to go back to music, I have theme music because you can overdo anything. And if only my theme music was only about up, focused, and tough, and rough, and let's move, I'd say wrong. Part of life is balance. So I have theme music that's about calmness, because it's great to have your fighting spirit be engaged, charge forward. I need that in the corporate world. I need that with clients to help.
And what's your theme music for that, for the calmness
Well,
approach?
to rest, recharge, rejuvenate. I
Right.
like ours.
Right.
I have Symphony in Fen Country by Vaughan Williams, and it's very soothing, relaxing, helps me figure out, so how did today go?
Right.
How do you feel about today? Not just what do you think, how do you feel? Because we know that an integrated approach to thinking and feeling is better than a detached approach for mental health.
Mozart it would be the composer I think that a lot of people would turn to for that kind of restfulness.
Yes, because we know that our society pulls us into fight and flight response a lot. Not necessarily bad, but that's exhausting to always be ready to go. It drains our body's resources mentally and physically and emotionally. So to go into relaxation response and be very calm means that I can actually be more productive by being in flow more when I've rested, when I've been calm. Not because I need 3 hours of couch time, it's just that for 20 minutes, several days a week of being calm, it helps me be in flow more, be more productive.
Brilliant. And so that's a great strategy to support us in whatever approach we want, whether we need to get going, we need to make that sales call, or we need to just think and support ourselves, or whatever it is. Find out what musical approaches are best for you.
What builds you,
Yeah.
what calms you,
Right.
and what helps you go to flow, because flow is when we're at our most productive, whether in our relationships, physically doing a project, intellectually just sitting and thinking. Believe it or not, that's actually work. Some people think you have to be busy with your hands to be busy working. I disagree. Thinking sometimes is a lot better than rushing off to do it. You know, measure twice, cut once.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
thinking it through more than once is not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm big on theme music for different uses. I am big on moving to music, because again, mind, body, muscle memory. So rollerblading, exercising to tunes, because then it keeps me at a certain pace. But also for the workplace, and where a lot of your listeners are looking for insight, it's about relationship management. Don't let them happen by mistake. Oh, incidental relationships are great. I got to meet a gentleman in an elevator in Scarborough, and he's turned into a good acquaintance. We're not best friends. We don't go for beers often, but he's got insight into life and youth because he works with youth all the time. He likes what I do in the workplace and volunteering and working with youth. So we hang out on occasion. But if I hadn't said, hello, what do you do? I'd have never met him. Because he's 6'5", former football player, rather imposing. And the last thing you would have thought of from a distance was this guy's a soft, touchy-feely mental health care worker, because it looks like he'd rather say boo than hello, because it was intimidating.
Sometimes first impressions aren't always the right ones.
No, that one was really wrong. He's actually a teddy bear disguised as a football player.
Nice, nice. So you've talked about the strategy of music, the strategy of moving, and we didn't spend much time on that, but just to go back to that for a second,
Yes.
I think that everyone knows at some level that doing activity rejuvenates themselves and it keeps you healthy. And it also, in addition to keeping you healthy, it gives your body a certain rhythm that helps you think.
It helps rejuvenate your mind because it oxygenates the brain, it rejuvenates the body, it helps release tension. So exercise is a very vital part of being resilient.
Right.
But one of the other things after exercise, with or without music, is what do you choose, or who do you choose to be with? And recruiting, finding, nurturing, and keeping mentors at any age, I think, is important.
Mentors, yeah, absolutely.
Because I don't care how old you are, we need people to make us rethink who we are, how we are, what we're doing, where we're doing. I was in sales for a long time. In fact, at 9, I had a paper route, and by 11, I had almost doubled the size of it. Would you like a newspaper warm and dry Monday to Friday before 6, always before 3 on Saturdays?
Anyone would say, yes, of course. When do we start?
And 3 years later, the Per Globe kid, and back then the Telegram, now the Sun kid, I had half of each of their business because I had that little pitch, thanks to my parents. Warm and dry before 6, definite, specific.
Yeah,
And back
deliverable.
then, and deliverable, and before 3 on Saturdays, although I must admit on Saturdays I sometimes sat and read the cartoons, and they sometimes got it by 4.
But they weren't going to be upset because they had everything else that was...
Well, yes, one of the other young gentlemen I competed against thought 11 at night wasn't a bad deal. He was easy to beat.
But that's another great strategy, is that you were very specific about your deliverables.
Absolutely, and part of being resilient is undercommit and overperform. I meet too many people who commit to 100 things, do 90, and then their clients and themselves consider themselves a favor. Why not commit to 70 incredibles, do 75, and you're ahead?
Right. And emphasize how great that extra 5 was. Don't just
Absolutely.
let it slide.
Absolutely.
Just make sure you point it out.
Because part of managing our career to have a resilient career is, what are the expectations? How have they been discussed? And I have a program I do with new teams, broken teams, hurting teams called Rights, Roles, and Responsibilities. And it's articulating what our rights, what our roles, and what our responsibilities are, and discussing expectations. I report to you, oh, you're an early bird. You like 6 in the morning arrival time because that's you, but work hours are really 8 to 4. Oh, I'm a morning person too. Well, but my idea of early morning is arriving at 7 because I'm less traffic. And I like to work late 3 days a week, but Friday afternoons around 2, I like to leave unless there's something urgent, because I've more than done my 40 hours by Thursday.
If only the workplaces could be that resilient, that accommodating.
Depending on the workplace, if you do phone answering or customer service on the phones, you can't leave. But for some of us, if you discuss it, some places it's actually doable if you discuss it. But if you never discuss it, it's never going to happen.
And so that ability is knowing exactly what your value proposition is, who you are, what you have to offer,
Exactly.
and what your grounds for negotiating are. That's being really clear.
Yes, at one point in my career, I had to do a lot of work in February, March, and April because it was Christmas order time. Well, if you're doing 60 to 70 hours a week in February, March, and April, then it stands to reason to me that in June, July, and August, you really don't need to do a full 40-hour week if there's nothing urgent and you're on time and on schedule with your numbers. Right. So as long as your numbers are really good in sales, then what's wrong with a 35-hour week? Because you've done your 60 to 90 for 3 months to make sure that things were on time and on purpose, and you put it all to bed.
Oh, if only we could all be so reasonable. We'd all be a happier workforce,
yes.
I think. Yeah. So, Michael, tell us about some of the way, some of the successes you've had with your resiliency programs in
Certainly.
the workplaces?
Certainly. I had a sales force in technology that said that they were doing 20 hours a week more than they used to and getting less return on investment because their buyers were inundated with offers based on price, inundated with just too much information, basically overwhelmed. So from a resiliency point of view, we looked at a strategy of who are your buyers personally and what type of organization do they look at. So we did we got them to do an assessment with the buyers. And so the buyers then, we looked at personality styles, we looked at organizational styles, and then we looked at how do you sell to them, how do you consult with them. And it was a small force of 12 staff, but the results we got back was by matching sales styles to personality styles and organizational styles, suddenly the sales calls were half as long and there was more time for relationship building and problem solving as opposed to, we have to see this new information. And yet, no. If this is a relationship styled buyer, then you got to get to know them more, and your relationship style buyer probably has relationships inside his organization that has issues. And some buyers actually just said to these salespeople, just go see my people. If you can solve problems with what you offer, come back to me with a reasonable proposition. And so it suddenly changed the whole sales. The Montreal rep said, it's saving me 4 hours a week, and I'm doing more business. How did you know this? Well, I didn't. It's just that you can't keep selling the same old way. As the society evolves and changes, you can't keep doing business the same way.
So that makes a lot of sense. For anyone listening who's done any kind of selling, you know that it has to be customer focused for sure. And it's taking the extra step of matching your style.
Matching styles. So we had a technical style rep who loved to talk about 3 decibels of accuracy and all the latest hardware, software issues and how we could save them time. And the rep was like, no, my people have problems.
Right.
The IT people solve them. I don't want to know the jargon.
So where does resiliency come in?
Resiliency is stepping back and saying, how do we do this with less fatigue? How do we do this with less energy and more joy? That's how I define it.
Right.
So that you don't keep hitting a wall. And regardless of whether you're in customer service, whether you're in sales, whether you're in accounting, how do we do it with less fatigue? How do we do it with more joy? It might not sound corporate, but the reality is we know that corporately, if you talk to HR people, we're having staff in certain sectors that within 2 to 5 years of their career, and these are high-level professionals, they're having the same illness issues based on stress and fatigue that used to take place 20 years in. So I got to work for the Singapore government 2 years ago, and they're very big on resiliency. They even have a department of resiliency.
Wow.
And they want to lead the Pacific Rim, if not the world, on helping staff learn what's resiliency, how to use resiliency, and they're going to roll it out in phases, starting first with the workers, frontline, then go up, and then eventually they agreed with me they're going to work it backwards. It sounds invasive, but helping workers understand how to help their family be more resilient. Because if your workplace is stressing you and you have an illness, you take that home with you.
Absolutely.
And South Florida State University, I took a course there. They have a thing on secondary stress. So if you hang around somebody with stress issues, you eventually get some of the issues. Humans have antennas. You just don't see them.
Yeah.
So in talking to emerge room nurses or in doctors, if they have a very hectic, busy schedule and a shift or 2 or 3 in a row, not nice, lots of people coming in that are hurt and wounded, it stresses them out. Well, you talk to their spouses, oh yeah, they feel it too.
So in that kind of situation, how would a nurse in a highly stressful workplace deal with those issues?
Part of it sounds cold, but they have to be caring and try to be detached a little. Just acknowledge that, oh, here's what's going on. Okay, I have to step back 1 notch. So I've talked to business people who said, oh, I only have a $3 million company. Their words, not mine. Any entrepreneur that grows their business to $3 million, good for them.
Right.
And my one biggest customer of 400,000 years going bankrupt, owing me a lot of money. Oh, well, you can go, that's it, the world's collapsing, or you can go, oh, I guess I have to find my way out of this. So you can do it on fear, close down, not answer the phones, be reactive, wait till the sheriff shows up with a letter saying you're in arrears for the following things, or you can phone everybody and say, hey, some people say I shouldn't tell you this, but here's what's going on. I need to renegotiate my terms of engagement with you. And so being resilient, whether it's a healthcare professional, educational, business, community activist, politician is about what are your terms of engagement. Do you allow people to own your time and space because you're extra committed, or are you committed? It's okay to allow in the moment to be there, but there's a certain number of skills that we have to practice, and part of being resilient in the model I've developed is that all the research in stress hardiness, resiliency, descriptive behavior styles, they all talk about mindfulness, and mindfulness is how do I be in the moment without judgment. So that helps me be there, pay close attention, but it also helps me pay attention to how are they feeling, how am I feeling, so I can pay more attention to my own feedback and not get overly involved, so I can actually maximize my performance. And the first person to teach me this was my martial arts instructor. Said if you focus on the fact that they're 50 pounds bigger than you, 8 inches taller than you, you're in trouble. If you focus on their eye movements, what they're going to telegraph their next move, and that you have skills and abilities different than them, you have a chance of a draw or a win. If you only focus on what they're better at than you and getting more gifts than you, you've lost before you started. Be in the moment, just watch, pay attention, and act accordingly. So
that's a great little story. And, you know, in communication skill training, that is exactly what you teach. You pay attention. You pay attention and you focus on what the individual is, the other person is sending out, verbally, but particularly non-verbally.
It's vital. And it also can be a lot of fun. I mean, one of the things I've done as a volunteer is deal with cancer patients. I mean, I've also got programs for fee, but it's also for free. And it's like, okay, do you want to be a victim or you want to be victorious? Whether you're going to physically win or lose, which is big, obviously enormous, there's also the emotional, the intellectual, the social. There's all these other things you can engage in while you fight. And people go, oh, I got so focused on the physical, which is important, obviously. You live in the body. You want your body to win. But there's all these other pieces. And if you engage the other pieces, it's amazing how the quality of the experience can go up. So if people that are seriously ill can do it, I know the rest of us can do it. It takes time. It takes practice.
And it takes focus. It takes dedicated focus.
It takes focus. It takes one of my key things that I deal with. I work with a company where somebody brought a handgun to work. Not good. So after the police, fire, and ambulance have left, and then the employee assistance program 6 months later had helped the staff reconcile that somebody pointed a gun at them and blah, blah, blah. And the person involved had dealt with police and lawyers and all that. It was not part of what I do. The manager and the owner of the company called and said, we still have one department with a 25% absentee rateism every week. It's kind of hard to run a company with only 130 staff. Excuse me. So we did a resiliency, three-hour programs, nothing long, and one of the people there was so disengaged out of fear, and I'm not saying they're right or wrong, their expectations of somebody they thought was a friendly coworker pointing a gun at them made them very jumpy, rightfully so. But being engaged, looking at your rights, roles, and responsibilities and taking charge of your, taking ownership over your staying resilient or becoming more resilient. So I asked her point blank one day in a coaching session, do you have a library card? Well, no, why? I said, because they can save you a lot of money and you need what's in there. So we've talked about theme music. Well, there's also movies.
Right.
And so what movies have you watched lately that inspire you? What documentaries that you can watch that can inspire you? Because we are a complex, interrelated organism. So some of the movies are a little corny and some of them aren't. I've mentioned I like Rocky. I make no bones about it. I've teased that I'm a little ashamed of it, but not really. It's just my way of getting everybody else to acknowledge that some of their favorite music might be a little poppy. And that's not wrong, just is. But then so I said, so what books? What biographies? What autobiographies? What audio tapes? What books of art? Just beautiful things that you can appreciate, because I wanted her, instead of being that closed down, shut down flower that looked like it was dehydrated in the pot ready to die, I wanted her to water herself and open up her blinds so she could open that flower up to the sun and start to absorb life's goodness again. And she went, a library card? It's that easy? I said, I didn't say it's easy. I'm asking you to watch 2 inspirational videos every week. I'm asking you to read 2 autobiographies or biographies of people that made a major difference in this world, because your coworkers want you back. You should get back to work when you're comfortable. I'm not pushing you to go back. I'm pushing you to get ready to go back. Of course, I've also found that people start to get ready. They get ready.
And you gave her some real strategies. It's not, you didn't just say, get ready.
Because it's not hocus pocus.
Strategies.
Those autobiographies and movies and books, it's all about, in part, how you define yourself.
Right.
Victim, victor. Easy to say.
And if you reach out and you find things that do motivate you, and you begin to fill yourself up with motivation.
Absolutely.
And the approach that other people have taken, then it does influencing you.
Absolutely. The Viktor Frankl, from his famous book from the 40s, sorry ladies, but it was the 40s, Man's Search for Meaning.
Yes.
In life,
Yeah.
people help us stretch or shrink.
Right. Viktor Frankl is an interesting thought because, you know, he was the man in a concentration camp, and if anyone
Yes.
had suffered the absolute reason to shut down from life, it was Viktor Frankl, and he was able to show all of us that it doesn't matter what happens to you, there is a way out, that you don't have to be victimized.
Absolutely.
It's absolutely true. You know, and I think all of us listening have the experience of having been put down, whether it's by a parent or a manager or a spouse or a child, and you just get really shut down, and it's, you know, sometimes it just really gets us down. But when you think about the ability to just separate yourself from that feeling of being shut down and knowing that you don't have to be victimized by it, come up with some of these strategies that you have just talked about, and just have the intention of rising above and saying, okay, I'm not going to let this completely destroy me. It's one part.
I deal with many different groups, and one of my groups is a group that's come together to help themselves and help each other from a distinct cultural group. And they talk about the pot of crabs issue in their society.
A pot of crabs?
A pot of fresh caught crabs.
Okay.
Crabs, C-R-A-B-S. You know, like you go fishing for, crab boat,
right.
crab pots. And they said, imagine you've got a 20-gallon bucket, and they're half full of crabs. And one crab finally reaches up and gets a hook over the edge, and it starts to climb its way out of this bucket because it's sure death, I'm going to be eaten.
Right.
And what do the other crabs do? Oh, no, you don't. Get back here. And pulls them back in the bucket. And they think that that's unique to their society, but no.
Right.
Based on how we define ourselves as families, as individuals, cultures, communities, you know, you can't be doing too well. Don't you know who you are? Get back here. I have a friend who's gone off and got a master's degree and worked in Norway and Japan and all over the States and Canada. And what does his sister say? Oh, well, he thinks a lot of himself. Well, I've never seen him be anything but humble, but for whatever reason, she chose not to go past grade 12.
Yeah.
And he went, how far can I stretch?
Yeah, you know that, Michael, you bring up an interesting point, too, of strategy, and that is to surround yourself with people who you want to be like, not necessarily who reflect you in the moment.
Absolutely.
But people who will stretch you to be more of what you want to achieve.
I think I used to tease people about my spouse that you should hang out with people that are smarter and better looking than you. It might, the better looking might not wear off, but the smarter definitely will, because it changes your level of aspirations.
Yes, it does.
You know, you want people that help you learn how to perspire as you aspire. Because if you're going to perspire, you want to do it smartly, not just hard. Hard work's not much good.
And you want to be looking good while you're doing it.
Yeah, you want to work smart, not hard.
Right,
so
right.
you know, you want to aspire to things, but you want to have people around you that can do it smart, not just hard.
Absolutely. It's like, if, you know, we all want to make more money, then we find people who are achieving that higher financial bracket, in a different snack bracket than we are.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
You know, you want to drive a nicer car, hang around with people that drive nicer cars. They'll probably help you, show you how they made money so they could do that.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yes, we talked about earlier about mentoring and being mentored. And I think mentoring is as important or more important because it gets you back to basics. Nothing like having 5 18-year-olds or 23-year-olds saying, so what's the next step? Say, well, what do you think the next step is? And bouncing things back and forth. I got to work with a whole bunch of 16-year-olds with a major charity, and it was really interesting because they kept saying, so what's the next step? I said, no, I'm your advisor. You're in charge. You're the assistant. You're the financial controller. And they went, oh. I said, well, you know, I could talk down to you because, you know, I'm old. You're young. I could say, well, you know, I'm the old guy. I must be smarter than you based on age, but that's not true. You know, I mean, I have perspective. I have experience, but you've got fresh eyes, and maybe perhaps you're going to reinvent something and do it with half the effort, twice the money.
And you know that's interesting because whether you're young and just looking for your path, or you're mid in your career, wherever you are, so, you know, you get to that place where you just want to be told sometimes. You just want to know, what is it? What do I, tell me, what do I do now? And it doesn't work like that. In fact, it's better when you don't tell someone what the next step is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we help them discover, they help themselves discover, and they raised $5,400 for their charity to take it to the next step.
Fabulous.
There was a hiccup in funding, and suddenly there were $4,900 or $5,100. How will we do that? Mm-hmm. Geez, I said, I've helped raise $20,000 in a week for small charities a few times through bootstrap marketing or guerrilla marketing, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. However, I got told I was only an advisor. That's good. You're in charge. Besides, it'll look better on your resume that you actually did it than as you followed the old guy around.
Yeah.
You know, which one do you want? Which one's going to hold your head higher?
Be the chef, not the sous chef.
Yeah, I don't mind being the sous chef because I've been the chef. So I don't mind being the janitor if it helps make it a success because I don't need to lead the charge.
You know, as you're speaking, Michael, it's so clear that this concept of resiliency, getting yourself back up on track, pulling yourselves up by the bootstraps, or just really facing whatever adversity or setback is, that is all about intention, and
Yes.
it's all about your internal dialogue.
Oh, so much of it is internal. I developed a model because I wanted a model that 30-year-olds could talk to 13-year-olds about, but also talk to 63-year-olds about. Mm-hmm. And so the model's pretty basic. We shrink or we stretch. And that's okay. It's okay to visit your shrinking side. When you're human, you know, you got to acknowledge you're going to visit there. Just be careful, don't live there.
Yeah.
If you catch yourself, you're there more than a day, give your head a shake, call a friend. But make sure you call a friend that's going to help you stretch, not shrink more with a pity party. And so when we choose to shrink, we're focusing on helpless and hopeless and feeling overwhelmed, and that's okay. But check your food, your fluids. Have you got enough food? You got enough sleep? You got enough resources?
Do you know, there's something, though, about that being that place where you're shrunken, and it doesn't feel very good.
No.
But no, I mean, it doesn't feel very good. But the thing is that when you're there, you know you're there, and you don't like it, and you want to get out of it. And the process, the thinking process, the actual process of actually moving out of it is essential to actually getting to the next step.
Yes, and that leads me to stretch instead of shrink. You first of all have to do something that's not very pleasant. You have to accept that, I guess I'm in a rut.
Yeah.
I'm stuck, or I've got this overwhelming issue. At one point, I got given a chronic illness diagnosis.
Yeah.
Well, in my family, there's no such thing as nothing you can do. Yeah. So when the expert said there's nothing you can do about it, I went, he's fighting with all my family traditions. I guess he means well, but what he didn't know is that nobody can know it all, and by then there was 10 years of research saying people with chronic illness can have up to 20% less symptoms if they practice resiliency.
Yeah. There's a really interesting book on the market now called The Dip by Seth Godin, who's one of my favorite writers. Oh. And this book, The Dip, is about that exact transition of really honoring your place of being down, of being low, of being in that lower, and really acknowledging it and using it to your advantage so that your rise out of it is valuable.
Yes, so when we find ourselves there, the best thing to do is accept it. Doesn't mean you like it. Maybe you caused it, maybe you didn't cause it.
Right.
But you accept it. Then you say, what do I need to master it? And mastery is the process of growing through whatever it is, whether it's a physical, a mental, intellectual, it's a business issue.
Right.
And so mastery starts with that, we discussed earlier, an internal audit.
Right.
What do I need? Well, I've got the funk, I've got the blues, maybe I've got full-blown depression and need a medical expert, a mental health expert. Who's on my team outward? What do they do? Mm-hmm. Well, I have a friend who is unique and distinctive, which in my world is code for you never get seen with him in a business setting because, he has a funky way of how he walks and dresses, but he's decent, he's safe, he's respectable.
Right.
You just wouldn't bring him to a blue chip meeting, but he's good at making you laugh.
Yeah. So whatever strategies you use, whether it's finding people to make you laugh, it's using the music, it's getting focused, it's doing the martial arts, it's moving, it's whatever those techniques are that will get you to be mindful, to be intentional, and to be really thoughtful about where you are and what next step you want to get to.
And the next step is often reframing. How do you choose to see it, victim or victor? So by reframing, and accepting the path of mastery, you go, okay, so it's business, I have an issue. I have to master it.
Right.
Is it me? Is it us? Is it them?
Yeah.
What is it? So I worked with a sales team in June one year, and they were only at February's numbers.
Yeah.
Not good. Company's not going to be around in 18 months or less. So we reframed it. What does this mean about the marketplace? What does this mean about our careers?
Right.
And I got a call from the sales manager the next day by lunch saying, well, we've already paid your fee. We made our first sale based on what we brainstormed, because I didn't have all the answers, but we reframed them. They were stuck.
Right.
So we had 15, 16 sales professionals with up to 30 years experience not making sales for months. What's gone on? What's changed in the marketplace?
Yeah.
They weren't sharing.
Right.
This guy knew this had happened, this gal knew this had happened, but they were not, too many silos in that firm. But together, collectively, putting their egos down and just sharing vulnerabilities and mistakes, suddenly it was like, oh, the marketplace has shifted a lot. We knew something was going on, but everybody was just feeding tidbits back. We're all trying to not look too stupid.
So there is much to talk about resiliency, and I am sorry that we've come to the end of our time, Michael Ballard, but it's been really lovely to,
Thank you.
It's been really interesting, and I think that you've passed on some great strategies and insights on how to get yourself into a more productive place than you are. So tell us how to get in touch with you.
Oh, well, website, www.resiliencyforlife.com, or find me on the web there, or 416-229-4655. Have message will travel.
Okay. All right, Michael, thank you. And thank you for tuning into another hour of Essential Conversations and finding out how we deal with each other in the workplace and how we just get better at what we do. So resiliency, keep that in mind. And next week, we will be talking about some other way of conflict management. So stay tuned, and in the meantime, speak nicely to each other. I'm Suzanne Sherkin.